Hello, and welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's The Business Program. I'm Lori Hammel, actor, author, and SAG-AFTRA member. And today I'll be joined by my co-moderator, Betsy Capes, the founder and CEO of Capes Coaching. And just a reminder, this program is not meant to serve as a clinical evaluation for any specific individual. We instead would like to present ways of thinking about mental health specific to actors and performers. You can find additional resources in the description of this video. And it's now my pleasure to introduce my co-moderator, Betsy Capes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Betsy Capes. It's so great to be here. And I am the founder and president of Capes Coaching. And I'm thrilled to introduce our panel today. We have composer and educator Georgia Stitt with us, writer Ruthie Fierberg, and choreographer and educator Tanya Birl. Welcome to all of you. Hi, here they are. So, we're going to start off. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and this is the third panel in this series. So we are focused on helping actors and performers navigate their artistry and business in a proactive way. And as a freelancer, uncertainty is a given. So I'd love to start off with each of you sharing just a little bit about how you relate to the uncertainties of your specific industry. Georgia, would you start us off?
Hi, everyone. I'm Georgia Stitt. I'm a composer, lyricist, and a music director in the theater and film and TV. I'm just sort of marveling that I'm on this panel because I think I have so little grasp of mental health right now. I think I'm feeling coming out of the pandemic I've just gotten off of a roller coaster and I'm probably in line to get on it again. I will say that my sense of stability is kind of upside down right now, and I am leaning heavily on the things that I know how to do, and just trying to make sure that I can figure out how to do them, I can still do them for a living. I imagine that that's what we're going to be talking about today, and like how you find your footing in a world where it feels like it's upside down. But I'm here to listen as much as to talk. I'm also raising two daughters, and I think conversations around mental health are very much connected to parenting for me right now as well, and how to navigate young people, help shepherd them through this time, when they're looking to us for guidance, and sometimes we don't entirely have it. So that's a little bit about me, starting off with a bang. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Georgia. Ruthie, let's hear from you.
Yes, hi, I'm Ruthie Fierberg. Thank you so much for having me. This is an exciting group to get to talk to. It's not one I often get to speak with. As a writer and a journalist, my own freelance life is new to me. I have been in magazine media with full-time jobs, which is kind of a miracle in and of itself, for many years. My most recent full-time position was as the executive editor at Playbill. I was there from 2015 to 2020, and I chose to go out on my own. And I mean, journalism as a field, and especially arts journalism, has moved more and more and more and more freelance. Full-time and even part-time jobs there are entire networks for after magazine people, but I also have exposure to it from all of the people who I interview all day: directors, designers, choreographers, actors. I have an actor in my family, so I have a front row seat to that. So I have a few different perspectives on the freelance life, and it is a challenging way of life, no doubt about it. So I'm excited to be able to talk and, like Georgia said, listen.
Yeah. And we're going to get into more of the specific challenges. Tanya, we'd love to hear from you on this too.
Thanks for having me. I feel like I'm glad, Georgia, you started that way, because I'm like, who am I to talk about this? We all are in the same boat. So I think I'll just speak from my heart. That's all we can do. So I come to this, yes, a freelance movement director, a choreographer. I say I work with all things body. I also do systems facilitation and work around embodying change, which I think really works a lot to being a freelancer, and how change is just our constant. And also do a lot of work with embodied race and social justice work. So I've been having to practice what I preach through these 2 years. And it's been that to have to feel in my body everything that this pandemic has meant. Me and my partner are both freelancers, so we have a freelance household with 2 young kids. And so not only is my work, on the artistic side, but I've also dove full on to being, school teacher and, it's just adding to the list of things that a freelancer has to do, and a parent and a woman and all the things. So how do I prioritize my mental health in this? I think that might have been the question. But for me, I've been forced to redefine self-care, and that it's not a luxury, it is a necessity for my survival. And so we can get into that later, but just really making self-care something that has to be at the top of the list before I even think about what I do for a living.
Thank you so much, everyone, for just really starting to lay the groundwork for what we're going to be talking about today with uncertainty. So here's a question now. It's very easy to blame outside things for failure, any failure that we experience or not getting what we want. How have you taken a true career disappointment and gotten to the other side of it? I think that would be really helpful for our listeners today.
I think 2 examples jump to mind. One is when I had a full-time job. Before I was at Playbill, I was at Parents Magazine. I do not have children, but I didn't then, still don't. As I told people, war correspondents aren't soldiers, they're war correspondents. So not to compare parenting to war, but you know what I mean? Like, the people writing about something are not necessarily the people doing it. They're the people who talk to the people doing it. They're the people who do the statistical research. They amalgamate facts. So I was very young and didn't have kids and was working that job. And I took an edit test, which is kind of like an audition, honestly, for the next level up. And long story short, did not get the job. And it was an internal thing. So I had the benefit to be able to ask the supervisor what I could have done better. And she said, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And I said, "Yes, of course I'm sure." And in that feedback moment, she said to me, Ruthie, sometimes there are just things in life that you can't get better at. I am not an illustrator. As many times as I draw a person, it's going to be a stick figure and a stick figure and a stick figure. And maybe that's just how it is with you. And this skill was headlining. That's a devastating thing to be told, that no matter how hard you work, you're not going to get better. And the way I overcame that was simply by saying that's nonsense, and talking to other people who were willing to help me, who were willing to teach me how to headline. There are articles online about how to write better headlines, things like that. So there are resources out there, and you have to find the people who are willing to help you. But I believe that you can always improve and you can always learn. And then the second example I think of is my first year freelancing. 2021 was my first full year freelancing on my own. And it's a weird thing. I guess the actors out there are very used to auditioning and doing all of that work, and totally you might not get a job. In my industry, sometimes you have to do, like I said, an edit test. But in this freelance world, I have to kind of give away my ideas, not just show that I can do a job. It's like, if I have an idea for an event, I have to tell you that idea in order for you to put on the event. And I can't tell you how many contracts were in process and fell through. And I think in those moments, you just have to hold on to the fact that, just for me, I'm a person who sometimes afraid to hold on to my experience of joy because I'm so scared it's going to go away. And yet when other things happen that are painful or disappointing, for some reason, it feels like that's going to stay forever. So I try and bring up that temporary mindset of, if the joy can go away, it can also stay. If the pain can stay forever, then the joy can also, everything is transient and temporary. And you just have to, be smart with valuing yourself. I can go on and on, but I'll let someone else jump in.
Tanya, would you like to dovetail on that?
I mean, sure, those are great examples. Before being in the world of being on the kind of more creative side, on the other side of the table, I was an actor, dancer, performer, and my world, very much like Georgia, started and still is very much in the theater. And so I remember, I've always said when I teach that auditioning is the job and getting the job is the reward. And so for me, like, I was that weirdo who like loved auditioning, which I was like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to be in this. I guess I'm supposed to be in this because I was just like ready. And when I stopped loving auditioning, that's when I knew it was time to transition, because I was like, well, that's the job. So if I hate the job, then I'm not going to do this, because I'm going to audition way more than I'm probably going to work. I had a great career, but you audition a lot. And even when you're working, you're auditioning, right? So it's just never ending. So I remember auditioning for, I can use names because I love him, but for Rob Ashford for a new, it was Promises, Promises on Broadway. And it was the first time I had auditioned for him. And Rob Ashford is notorious and a good friend now, so I can say this, but his auditions are so long. They last forever, and your body is done by the end. And you're like, if I just wrecked my body, I better get this job, right? And sometimes they're weeks long, like the callbacks, and you're there for 8 hours. Like, it's just a lot. And I got all the way to the end, and I was fairly new to New York, and it seemed really exciting. And then, everyone has this story. At the very end, they're like, it was almost you, and then you don't get it. I was so crushed. But I still decided to pick myself up and go. I'm crazy, like, go to his show, another show he was doing that night. Like, I was that impressed by him that I went and I sat in the audience and I chose to be inspired, like, still be, like, not to be, to be inspired, but like, I'm inspired by this man. I'm inspired by his work. I'm going to show up, even though I'm heartbroken. And true story, a few weeks later, he was choreographing a new HBO pilot. And I got a call out of the blue, and he said, I don't even want you to audition. I'm just giving it to you. And that started the beginning of my relationship with him. And now, like, he hires me to choreograph with him. So it's like one of my favorite stories of total disappointment to, like, take a moment. I let myself go to the bottom of the well of disappointment and tears. And I think my husband was like, are you all right? Like, but I let myself go all the way, and then I still showed up. And I always also like to say that you don't audition for the show, you audition for the person. And he's taken me along with him his entire career. So, that's one of my favorite moments, turning disappointment around.
Oh, that is so awesome. And I love what you said, that you chose to be inspired by it. So important. Georgia?
I don't even know how to follow that. That was so inspiring. Done. That was just so good. But I want to follow on the lead of the discipline and the self-motivation and the having to get up the next day. The director, Hal Prince, always said that every time you have an opening night, you have to make sure you schedule a meeting for 10 o'clock a.m. the next day for your next project, because no matter whether the review is good or bad, you have to know that there's something coming next. And that sort of self-discipline, I think, is the hardest thing about being a freelance artist, just knowing that it's up to you to make sure that your next day is productive. I'm a real productive, like, I define my identity around whether or not my day was productive, and probably to a fault. Probably there are things I should be talking about in therapy about that. But the idea that, like, if I have checklists and I get things done, then it's been a good day. And if I have wasted it, then it's a bad day. And I actually think a lot during the pandemic, I've learned that that's not wasting, that that's part of regulating. And that certainly in this world where we have now so much of our work is on Zoom, and like, you schedule a meeting that goes until 4, and then you schedule another meeting that starts at 4. And sometimes you don't even allow yourself a break. I learned a word in the pandemic. We probably all know it, bio break. Somebody referred to a bio break, which is just the time that you need to go pee in between a Zoom call. And I was like, what kind of planet do we live on where we have to schedule a bio break? Like, it used to be that you had to commute from one place to the next. And so I feel inspired by what Tanya said at the beginning about self-care, about making sure that you check in with yourself about what you need. To really go back to the question, I think I do want to drill back into this idea of self-determination and productivity, because I have a musical that I started writing in like 2000, I'm going to say 8 or 9 or so, called Big Red Sun. And it won some awards in development. And I worked on it, rewrote it, and never got a production. Like, it never got out of the workshop phase. So many actors have written to me and said, I loved working on that piece. Whatever happened to it? And I was like, I don't know. I just couldn't get a production. And we finally had, my writing partner and I finally had a world premiere at this teeny tiny little theater way out of town. And they did it on no budget, and like 8 people saw it, and we did it. And then we were like, I think we're done. I think that's it. I think that's as far as that piece is going to go. And so this piece that I worked on, I'm not kidding, for like 14 years, and I have some really nice demos of, is dead in the water. And it's just the most disappointing. I still think about that piece. Like, what if we go back to it again? What if we go back? But I think for me, the lesson is that sometimes it is about learning when to cut your losses, learning when to acknowledge that it's not my best energy to keep going back and rewriting that piece, but to try to figure out what I learned from that piece to put towards the next one. And the discipline of having rewritten that piece so much has certainly helped me with other pieces. There are other pieces now that I feel like I know how to get to the finish line with, and pieces that have actually gone into production because of the discipline that I learned of that piece. But I think that's one of the biggest disappointments, is that you can work on something for that long and it just never sees the light of day.
That's so helpful. I think also because so many actors are multi-hyphenates now too, like, have really been told they need to create their own work to be seen. And I see a lot of that in the coaching room too. And then balancing and juggling that, knowing which projects to choose to invest in. That's so helpful, Georgia, to hear. I want to switch gears. It's so easy to focus on the challenges of the uncertainties of the business. What have you seen as the gifts, or like the payoffs, or the benefits of being in an industry that has these inevitable uncertainties? Who would like to take this one?
I guess the first thing I think of is just my family. It's challenging to be a freelancer because of the uncertainty, but for me, some days I am so grateful for being a freelancer, and some days I'm like, I wish I just had a job that told me what to do and where to be. But the freelancer is like, I can go on the field trip, on my daughter's field trip that day, because I don't have to clock in at a show. I choreographed a show out in Oregon at Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and my daughter at the time was in first grade. We took her out for 2 months and had the most amazing adventure. She was in the rehearsal studio with us, I was doing Peter and the Starcatcher, and she was giving notes with the director. And I feel like there's a level of, my life feels like I get to be in the driver's seat more, and I'm thankful for that. But it's interesting because the other day, our babysitter, or Mother's Day, I messaged her and just said, thank you so much for being a part of our tribe. And she said something to me like, I'm so inspired by how you do family, and how hard your life is, or whatever, how hard the juggling. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess it is hard, but it is hard. And I feel like I can, I'm just as much present as a mother with my kids as I am in my freelance world. And I feel like that's because I've chosen this type of career, and not the structure of what maybe it used to be. Simple, I think fast answer is the joy is family for me. Yeah.
Thanks. Ruthie?
For me, it's the freedom and the opportunity to work with so many different people, right? Like when I was in a full-time job, the other full-time staffers were my colleagues for 3 years and 5 years and another, right? And those are the people that you see and who you learn from every single day. And now I get to choose well, when I'm lucky, I get to choose. But even if I'm not, so busy and I have to take a job here or there, I learn something every single time because I'm working with someone different. And for me, it's a different editor, who's looking at my work that they might have feedback on a writing habit of mine that I've been doing for forever. But because they're fresh eyes, then I now write differently because they noticed a pattern that my previous editor was just like, yeah, that's how Ruthie writes, So you get great feedback. And also I find it really expansive, not just in the people, but in the types of work you get to do, which I imagine is the same. I know is the same for actors. You might get to work on a drama and then a comedy and a musical or a straight play or a concert or, different theaters around the country or different, sets and camera teams and all of those things. All of those will make you better because now my majority of my work is still in the arts world and I'm still writing about theater, but every so often I write something for Columbia University's School of Public Health. And I take that back with me as a new lens to whatever else I'm working on. So I think the expansiveness, the learning and getting to meet and understand the working styles of new people and other perspectives is incredibly valuable and enjoyable.
That's such a fresh perspective on it too. Thanks, Ruthie. Georgia, do you have anything you want to share?
I do. I mean, I want to say yes, and because both of those things, certainly the family and then the idea of expanding your world, both resonate with me very fully. I think I just was never going to be a person who wanted to have the same day twice. I never have had that. I mean, even when I've had jobs like in college, I had a retail job and I was like, oh, this is not for me. Just the idea that you have to go to the same place and do the same thing every day. I was like, why would anyone do this? We are creative people. At least the people on this call are creative people. And I think my joy comes from being inspired by the world, being inspired by the people around me, being inspired by the things I read and the people I read and the people I come into contact with. And like on this call, people I can learn from. I had a really good friend who is a film and TV writer who said to me once that the hardest thing about being a freelance person and a parent is that it cuts into your dreaming time. And I've held on to that for so long that that's what we have to protect, especially those of us who are writers or interpreters, actors, performers, people who are living in creative space, that dreaming time is so important. The time where you can say, what would this character do? What would I say in this moment? What is this about? This thing that I'm writing, what is it really about? What's the core question of what I'm trying to say? That those things can't be scheduled and they can't be like, I'm going to do that in the 30 minutes between this event and that event. That dreaming time, you have to have space for that. And so certainly in the pandemic, I do feel like I've gotten hyper scheduled. And in addition to my creative work, I also run a not-for-profit. And so between those two things, I just feel like so much of every minute of every day has been scheduled. And I feel like I draw the most joy when I remember to allow time. Sometimes I just write it on my calendar and I'm like, free time, thinking time, I write writing time. Sometimes I'm on retreat, just like, I'm not going to answer emails. I'm not going to return calls in this time. I'm just going to allow myself to think so that when I write tomorrow, I can come at it with the support of having had the time to figure that out.
Georgia, that actually makes me think about your disappointment into, flipping the switch on that, because I think we are often, even in this creative business, so results oriented. It's about the production. It's about opening night. It's about the Tony. It's about the Emmy. It's about, whatever it's really focused on outcome. And I think that process is really the beauty of what we do. And that dreaming time is exactly that. It's time to process.
And to value it as much as you value the appointments and the meetings and all of that. Yeah.
And to protect it. I mean, I find that I sometimes make we'll say constituents, the people who are expecting things from me, I make them angry because I'm hard to pin down. I'm like, can we meet? And I'm like, I don't know. I might need to be writing. I don't know. But that's because because I know what happens to me if I don't protect it. I turn into a horrible person.
This is so amazing, this conversation on dream time, because I just finished a 10-week I gifted myself a 10-week series workshop called the Black Women's Dream Lab. And we literally met for 2 hours a week and dream, like not only process like dreams in our sleeping dreams, but waking dreams, like, and just dreamed and entered each other's dreams together and reflected and helped. Like it was strictly for the dream. So when you said that, I was like, that's exactly where we're at. Like this world is beyond fucked up right now. And it's like,
Say it.
like, and I think it's like all of the greats, but have said what you just said. It's like if we don't protect the dream, right? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. And it's like that idea too of it reminds me of in the artist's way, filling the well, taking that time in between projects. But it also sounds like injecting into the schedule, which leads to the next question that Betsy and I were thinking about, which was just getting specific about being a freelancer. How do you spend your time? Do you actually have a system or systems that are in place as far as scheduling? Because oftentimes people will be, well, I'm a freelancer. It's amorphous. I can't define it. How do you work with your scheduling? And who would like to start? Because I want to know.
I'll go. I'll go. I mean, it's so scheduled. Like I can jump in on this one. I wake up at this. I mean, this is my life with kids is so different from my life without kids. But right now, and my daughters are 12 and 16, and so we're deep in, and it's the end of a school year, and so there's a schedule that will also change in July. But I'm very much defined by the academic year. My kids get up at 6:15. I am dealing with them until they get out the door. By 8:30, it's free. I do the Wordle. I sort of think that I have like no obligations until 8. And then I have for me, 8 to 2, I have like, that's workout time, that's take a shower time, that's write time, that's, anything sort of creative. And meetings get scheduled in that time. But if I am protecting it, then that's my time. I often find that meetings are scheduled in there, and that's when I get sort of frustrated. But then my kids start to come home 2:30, 3 o'clock. And then in that time, I can do meetings while they're in and out of the house. I can schedule, this is all, if we're on Zoom, this is all stuff that I can do from home. And then there's a little window from 6 to 8:30 where I'm helping with homework and making dinner and that sort of thing. And then I have another, we're in that right now. They're fending them for themselves right now. And then I have the evening available to me. And that changes if I'm going to a show, that changes if I have a meeting, that all the other things, but that's sort of the default. And I really feel like if it gets to be 11 a.m. and I haven't done anything productive, that my day's over. Like I haven't, that I've wasted it, because I know that window of time just disappears. And I start to feel really, really antsy if it gets to be afternoon and I haven't written something yet.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to jump in and share their schedule?
I mean, I guess I can share for anyone on the call who is a parent of very littles. I have a 3-year-old and a 9-year-old. And so I have a 3-year-old with me all day, except for 2 afternoons a week where she does a little outdoor forest school. So mine are more like every day is different, freelancer. Mondays, I go to the gym. And I know I can go to the gym, but I don't think I'm going to get any work done on Monday. So, but I'm going to take care of myself today and not worry about, and Monday's like my show day off. Tuesday, I'm here right now, but there's a sweet little church on my block, and they've let me co-work here the entire pandemic, which has saved my life with young kids in the house. So all my Zooms I do here, and it is like 2 minutes walk to my apartment. It is the biggest gift. So Tuesdays, I'm here all day. Like I know I can be in the church too. So any Zooms I have will be on a Tuesday. Anyone who knows me, they will always meet me on a Tuesday. Therapy is on a Tuesday. Like everything that needs a Zoom is Tuesday. Wednesday, my older daughter's in school 5 days, so very similar to Georgia, that schedule. But then Wednesdays, my little one has her morning, she's in school. So again, I will schedule things mornings. So I work one-on-one with people doing body work, so I will do that during her school time. And then after 12, I'm mom all the rest of the day. And then same, so like rinse and repeat, but so every day is a little bit different. But I am in this like co-working bubble 2 days a week. So I have 2 full days of work, and then I piece together where I can. And because I'm a mom of little ones, and I know, Georgia, you were here before, but like I usually fall asleep in the bed with them because I'm so exhausted and I didn't even brush my teeth. So I don't get anything done in the evening. And I know I'll get past that once they're both fully in school. But yeah, that's my schedule.
Thank you. I like too how there are similarities and there are differences, what works for you. And I think that's also for everyone who is a creative and freelancer to find those spaces. How about you, Ruthie? How do you schedule?
Yeah. Well, first, it's definitely a different life, right? Like I'm a single income household. So on the one hand, I have no one who I have to be responsible for, but I also am solely responsible for myself and my household. So, I mean, one of the biggest things is that I am a night owl. Like I get creative in the afternoon, and 10 p.m. without like clockwork. 10 p.m. is my amazing writing hour. And I have given that to myself. I have given up on everyone else is in bed by 10:30, 11 and wakes up at 7. And no, I go to bed between midnight and 1 and I wake up at 9. And that's how my body works. And that's how I feel rested. And that's how I maximize my time. And I think the kind of work that I do really, really varies. Like sometimes I have a panel that I actually am the moderator for. So sometimes I'm preparing questions and doing research. Sometimes I'm working on my podcast. Sometimes I have a deadline because I'm, writing something for a publication. Sometimes I just have to think about like what they would say is like new business, where I'm going to reach out to publications I've never written for or theaters that I've never done talkbacks at and say, hey, this is what I do now. Hire me independently. I live by a to-do list, and there is no rhyme or reason to the list itself. It is just a brain dump. But then what I do at the end of every day is I number my priorities. And I start with something small, actually, because like I said, those earlier morning hours are not my creative hours, but I can be productive. I can do things. Those are my email hours. Those are my new business hours. Those are my invoicing hours. And as the day goes on, I give myself bigger thinking tasks. And then I kind of do the same, make sure I've checked my email and scheduled social media posts and all of those types of things, because for me, it's also a lot of self-promotion. I would also recommend out there, because everyone is a brand now. I use later.com, or it's an app called Later that is a social media programming tool. And there are others out there, but this one does Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and they are just about to add TikTok. And so some days, like I like to use Monday as like, I will program the week of content for my podcast, and I do not have to touch it anymore. I hate social media. I want to just like do it and be gone, post and goodbye, So yeah. So it's really working on like when my most creative hours are, and not trying to match what anyone else says my schedule should be. I also am pretty much at the theater 4 nights a week. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, sometimes Sunday. So yeah, I think if anyone has more specific questions about my schedule, I'm happy to answer, but those are the broad strokes. And I think there are a lot of similarities. You have to, maybe you're not invoicing because you're on a contract that's paying you, but you should be tracking when you get paid, and you should be organizing, throw those receipts in the envelope and make sure that they're labeled, once a week or whatever it is. So, yeah, there's all that kind of stuff that has to go on.
That's great. And Ruthie, like just hearing all of you share about, I like to look at like, what are your energy cycles, what are the best times of day for you to do specific tasks? And I love hearing you say like 10 o'clock is your magic hour for writing.
It's my magic hour.
it's like amazing that you know that and own it, and that you're not there's like, it's beautiful. And for someone else like me, like Tanya, I have a toddler, like it's just 10 o'clock. I need to go to sleep because I'm up at 5 sometimes. So it's like, that just has to be the way it is. And we find our magic hour somewhere in the day.
Yeah.
But
And I would also
really
say
does.
it's like Georgia was saying about protecting time. Like I know for myself, if I see a large block of time, I'll get excited that I can get a lot done. But if I have a call at 10 and then a call at noon and then a call at 2, it looks to me like I have no time in the day, even though there's an hour here and an hour here but breaking things up doesn't work for me. So I try and schedule calls either at the beginning or at the end of the day so that I have that fluid time. So I think it's also about making, as much as you can, make your schedule work for you. If you're a person who likes to take breaks, that would actually probably be really good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to, that's so great. We could talk about that forever, but I want to move on. And Tanya, I want to throw this question to you because I feel like this is such a fundamental part of your practice as an artist and what I've read about you and what you do. And everybody else, please chime in too. How do you keep a sense of yourself and value and worth and persevere when you don't hear anything back about a particular job, or we rely so much on external validation and other people saying, hey, you did it, or this is why you didn't get it. So many actors are putting themselves out there on self-tapes, and it's like, crickets. And I see a lot of it in the coaching room. What advice or suggestions do you have for how to navigate that tricky piece of it all?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. It's nothing that I have mastered, and only what I'm practicing on the day to day. As we were talking about schedule, I could feel myself getting anxious. Just, I'm not someone who scheduling makes me, I am someone who needs consistency in my own way, but the kind of consistency that I need is maybe what you're talking about, which is how am I checking in with myself throughout the day about where I'm at, and then having grace to stop if I need to stop. And that's been a big one for me. I mean, so much of my career, and I know so many artists, I used to always say, I can give the director and the choreographer what they want before they even know they want it. Like that's like that. I just was like, that's my superpower. It's not that I'm necessarily the most talented, but I can. But there's a flip side to that, which is I'm always looking outside of myself for external validation, right? And so the work that I've been doing with myself in therapy, with my magic hour is 6 a.m. I'm so lucky my youngest is randomly a sleeper. My older one was up at 5, but my youngest sleeps next to me in the bed till 7:30. And I adapted this recent practice from Liz Gilbert, writer Elizabeth Gilbert, who I listened to her on a podcast, and she said that she in the morning reads a piece of writing, like maybe poetry or just something that can get her in a mind space that's not literal, like something that can kind of open her mind. It could be like sacred scripture. It could be anything that, and then she sits and asks herself, her higher self, God, the universe, what would you have me know today? And then she just sits, and then she writes. And that's been my practice recently of going into myself, because I can get up in the day and be like, what does the world need from me? What do my kids need? What does the world want? And instead, it's like, if I can start my day with that simple question of what do I need to know about myself, or what do I need to, and then go into my day from that. The writing also helps because it sparks I want my day to be creative. Like I want to. So before it was that, it was some form of centering prayer. So for me, finding moments of silence and stillness, meditation, whatever, pause and breath, that is the only way I can be like, am I doing, like, where am I? Like, where am I right now? And I know I have so many people to please, but like, where am I? So I hope that answers that question, but that's how I.
That's great. That's great. Does anybody else want to add on there?
Betsy, I cannot believe how many questions we came up with, and we are just scratching the surface now.
No.
Answers are so brilliant and so deep and encompass so many of the things that we were thinking about in trying to put something together for actors to deal with uncertainty. We were talking about the different times and phases that people have in their career when you're first starting out, while you're working, and then when you're in between jobs, even when you're working. And one of the things that we came up with that we wanted to ask about was, how did you learn how your business operates? Because there's a certain point when you're starting out, how did you find your rhythm and understanding of how your business works for you? Because we've all talked about schedules now, which is so great, and about things that Ruthie was saying, like someone said, you have to stop, and you said, no, this, I'm going to find other resources. And so like working through, and Georgia deciding, I am going to use this experience with this musical and help it inspire me and lift me to new spaces with my other work that's coming up, instead of deciding that this defeats me, which so often when people are starting out, that's what can happen. So how did you learn how to operate, and how your particular business that you're in works for you? Would someone like to answer that? Maybe Ruthie, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I mean, my business is so new, because I also, even though 2021 was my first full year freelancing, I left Playbill in November of 2020. I hadn't intended to freelance. I had intended to take some time to work on my podcast and work on this video series that I have, and then go back to full-time work. And it was only with like some people reaching out to me asking if I wanted to consult or do this or do that, that I thought, oh, maybe I could do this. So I would say I'm like a year and maybe a year and 4 months into building this. And I think that is honestly what part of what helps me in this phase is I am still building this, like that sentence. And, my therapist was like, think about a person that is a year old. Like that is an infant. Your business is in infancy. So allow yourself the grace to be learning and figuring it out, and trial and error, and like, so long as the baby doesn't die or get really hurt, you're doing a good job, But I also think one of the things is valuing yourself. In the beginning, I really was afraid about, charging too much, because I was just so desperate to have any work. And I've actually found that honestly, just in the past, like 4 to 6 weeks, people have asked me to do things at the rate I gave them a year and a half ago or 3 years ago when I was doing stuff on the side, or for no money at all. And the answer is just no. I'm so sorry. I support your cause. I'm so excited you're doing this work. But I need to be, and I use this term that someone said to me once, I need to be valued tangibly. I need to be valued tangibly is what I find the graceful and polite way to say, I need money for the work that I'm doing. This isn't a hobby. Yeah. And then just to also like piggyback on that idea of building and of stages of your career, I think staying centered to yourself, Betsy, like you were asking, is really important. I'm a former dancer, not professionally, but my physicality is really important to me. So I start my day with like a physical warm up. And I think that there are a lot of physical people in this room. So like, don't just do it before you have a dance audition or before you have to work. Like wake your body up for the day. And in the moments when I am questioning myself, like, there are 79,000 podcasts out there. I have waited too long. This idea has been in my head for 5 years. Why am I going to make my podcast? I have it hanging right here on my desk. I have the words to Stephen Sondheim's Move On written on that wall, and I stare at it all the time because it's let it come from you, then it will be new. it doesn't have to be a new idea. It doesn't have to be, but it will be new because it comes from you. And that's what helps me through the struggle times and the times when I'm doubting myself.
Hello,
Hi.
welcome.
I love that song. I often think of those exact same lyrics. Sorry that I'm so late. Hi,
We're
everybody.
glad to have you here. We're just getting started with our audience questions now. So
Fantastic.
yeah. So shall we begin?
Oh, wait, you want to say something, Georgia?
I want to jump in on that before we move on. That like, how did you learn your business thing? Because I think what I do is so different from what actors do. I'm a musician, music director, composer, and I think I just have to acknowledge the mentorship process. And it was never formal. I have never applied for a mentorship. I've been chosen as a mentee, but almost everything that I've ever learned professionally has been because I was in the room with someone who did it. Like I love hearing Tanya talk about her relationship with Rob. And I've had that with so many conductors, so many composers, so many music directors who have said, you know, I'm in the room as the rehearsal pianist or the audition pianist, and I watch the way a music director speaks to an actor and what's successful and what's not. And I'm like, okay, when I'm the person, then I'm going to do it that way. And I mean, I just did every skill along the way, watching someone else and being like, oh, I really have to learn how to transpose at sight. I don't know how to do that, but actors need me to do that. So I'm going to have to make sure that I know how to do that. And watching the people who do it well and modeling, like I want to be that kind of professional. And I think, I mean, I could list so many people that I think I want to be more like that. And then at some point you get an opportunity, someone pulls you up and they're like, you seem ready. Why don't I promote you to the next level up? And so I've been in New York doing this for upwards of 25 years. And it's just year after year after year, somebody's like, I think you're ready to do the next thing. I think you're ready to do the next thing. But counter to that, I also just want to say almost every big step forward is because that I've ever gotten is because I put out into the universe, I would like to be doing this now. I've said to somebody, how do I do this? How do I get this? I would like to go out on tour. I think I'm ready to be the music director, not the assistant anymore. I'd like to make my own album. How does that happen? You know, and once you just start putting it out in the universe, people think of you in a different category. I have an actor friend who was doing a lot of national tours, and she said, I don't want to do national tours anymore. I want to do it on Broadway. And she got an offer to do a national tour with a lot of money, and she turned it down. And I remember the time being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you turned down this job. But within 6 months later, she got the thing that she was manifesting because she had made space. She turned down the job that she didn't want to make space for the job that she did want. So I think it's a balance of all those things, being, you know, listening and taking in from the people around you, and also just making space to receive it.
And asking questions, like actually meeting with people and asking questions, that costs someone nothing. People are so happy to share information with you that if you peripherally know someone or someone knows someone who you want to talk to, just ask questions about how they got there, because people are more often than not willing to share.
Fabulous. Betsy, should we start with the audience questions now?
Yeah, why don't we do that? Which one? Yeah, you go for it. What do you see?
Okay, well, I'll pull this one up right now. Great. Okay, here's a question here. And Jeremy, would you like to take this one? Pre-pandemic, I would work my full-time survival job, then would do classes, audition, shows, make videos, everything I could possibly do on nights and weekends. Now I have trouble finding the energy for those things, and at the same time feel depressed, frustrated, and miss being creative. Any advice for reinvigoration in this climate?
Wow, that is such a good question. I think it's also something that's so universally struggled with, no matter what kind of level, quote unquote, you like perceive yourself to be at. I don't think it's so. I think, you know, finding ways to enjoy what you're doing and connect to why you're doing it, versus doing it for a specific result. I think that will not only sustain you in the moment, but also long term, once you sort of get the opportunity in your head that you're going for, like once you get it, that's actually the thing that keeps you good at it and keeps you, you know, having a sustainable life even then. So, and I also, you know, I'm a, for those who don't know, maybe you talked about me before I was here. I'm sorry. I created a show, and now I'm like on the other side of the camera, but I was an actor for a long time and I still love acting. And so I've like done the grind and like the audition thing. And I would also say like, it's so easy to just, if you make a tape or you do an audition or you do a scene and you're like, it's okay to not do one. You know, if you're not feeling up to it, to save your energy for one that you are feeling up to, for one that you connect to, just kind of like stepping back and saying like, what do I want to actually spend my time making? What clicks for me on this tape? And if one doesn't click, or you don't get around to it, or you don't feel like you did a great job or whatever, it's okay. It's okay to skip one, because it's like this idea of like numbers and like quantity and like getting out there and putting yourself out as much as possible is of course part of it, and like that's life and it's useful. But I would say try to reconnect with just the reason that you're doing any of it, and try and find joy in the doing of it versus like where you're getting to. And I also would add that, having been in a casting process where I've watched like hundreds of auditions and actors, and I wish that I could go back and tell myself when I was doing more acting and doing auditions that actually when we didn't go with, we saw hundreds of people and there was not one person that I was like, that's a bad actor, they don't know what they're doing, you know what I mean? It was all just like for a million reasons that not right, not XYZ. Sometimes you want someone and the people you're working with don't agree, they want someone else, and there's just a million reasons why like the tapes don't happen or they don't go anywhere. And I'm being 100% honest, like on the other side of the table, it was never once that like, oh, that's a bad actor, or that's not somebody I would ever want to see again, or like, it's just all that. My answer is way too long, but to all that to say, like, to demystify the idea of the not getting it or the not getting the thing, it's like try and shift the point to doing it anyway and enjoying doing it. And that, I think that really will lead to dividends.
Thank you so much.
Can I jump on that?
Yeah.
I just think when you're, one of the things that really helps me is thinking, and this relates both to something that I took Betsy's workshop about how to accomplish goals, and then I took Tanya's workshop about embodying change. There's just so much about like knowing yourself. But for me, I have learned about myself even more so in the pandemic that I feel successful when I finish something. That's just a thing about me. And so if I'm like, today I'm going to write a musical, then I'm going to fail. Like, I'm not going to write a musical today. But if like, today I'm going to rewrite this scene and I do it, that's great. Or today I'm going to rewrite the A section of this song. Not I'm going to fix the song, I'm going to rewrite the A section of the song. Then I'm successful and I've done it. And even just thinking about like, how can I manage my goals and my sense of success so that I can be successful? How can I set myself up to be successful so that I can check things off at the end of the day and be like, I said I was going to do that and I did that. And maybe tomorrow I can do something a little bit bigger, or maybe I can't, but that was what was successful. I also just wanted to say I started a folder in my email account called Feel Good Emails. And anytime anybody writes me an email and they say, you're amazing and I love the blah, blah, blah that you did and you're just the greatest, I literally put it in the Feel Good Emails. And
I have that. I have a thank you folder.
There are times when I'm like, I'm just going to read through a few of these today and remind myself that people like what I do and that it's important that I show up and do it.
That is so great. I mean, that sort of dovetails into this next question from the audience on imposter syndrome. And I just want to take a moment because I'm looking at some of these other questions, Lori, just about like the grind of it all. And Jeremy, you were talking about that too. How do you stay the course, especially like in this climate we're talking about, where there's so much self-tape going on, but specifically with imposter syndrome, this question is, some days, weeks, even I have nothing work related to do until school is out, has a 3 and 5-year-old, and some I'm bogged down with auditions. I can barely catch up, but then I don't book. How do you fight the imposter syndrome if you do, or the feeling that you're literally just living a fantasy, wasting time? Does anybody have any feedback on that or thoughts on that?
I mean, I can just say I relate,
Yeah.
just like total and complete Like, thank you for being honest about that, because it's like, yeah, we got to get real. Like, with we're getting, like, of what's going on, and it does feel like that. I think my husband said something the other day of like, it feels like he's running. He's a runner, so he's like, I love running marathons, but kind of like what you were saying, Georgia. But I need to know where I'm going, and right now it feels like I'm running this marathon and I have no idea where I'm going. I'm just running. And that's the feeling that I feel too. Like, and I'm trying to think how that also feels, and how imposter syndrome comes in there. And I just recently read and watched Viola Davis. I just read her book, and she talks a lot about imposter syndrome. And wouldn't we all love to be Viola Davis? But how real it is for everybody, no matter what level we're on. And I think it does go with that running thing, because we're outside of ourselves. Like, and then that makes me think of what Ruthie was saying, and I like, let it come from you, then it'll be new. It's like I almost have to stop running, stop going for a second, which feels like you're gonna die. Like, like it feels like I can't, because then everything I have up in the air is gonna just. But this pandemic has forced me to stop, like, come back in. Like, what am I doing? Like, I think this is maybe tying what we've all said. Like, what am I even doing this for? What do I have to say? Why am I passionate about what I'm doing? Like, asking myself all the questions to then get back on the treadmill again. And for me, I have to tell myself that it's not moving backwards, that it's a pause. Like, I'm just it's not that I've wasted time. It's not that I've lost something. That it's time well spent to pause, reassess, and be like, where am I in this? Because to me, my imposter syndrome flares up when I'm running after something that isn't even me, and wasn't even mine in the first place. So that I just deeply relate. And I also don't know, like, I feel like that it is our world right now. Like, I feel like it just is our world right now. So I think you're able to speak to what just is a constant. So for me, again, the pausing, the stopping, the why, and then starting again, is just the only way I've been able to catch my breath enough to be like, I'm here and I have something to say. Yeah.
Ruthie, yeah.
I'll say, I mean, I suffer from, I think we all do, but imposter syndrome rages inside me. Often because I'm also one of the youngest people who are often in a room or a decision-making place. And so that can also like come into question, and not just within myself, but from the outside. And other than the thank you or the feel good email folder. But I think there's something to that, because it's about reminding yourself of your successes. You have to draw upon your own, just like you'll remind yourself of the time you bombed something. Like, our brains just go to the negative place, but there is also a well of positivity there. So if you go to the positive and you go to, well, this is the last, I was freaking out last time about this audition, and then actually look at how many auditions I did really well, and I made it to the callback, and I made it to the final round, and use those to fuel you. And I also think that, for me, part of the imposter syndrome is like, I will have a crisis every time I go into an interview. It could be Viola Davis, or it could be Sue from New Jersey, because I do like personal podcasts as a survival job from this company called Artifact. And 15 minutes before the interview, I'm like, what am I going to ask them? What am I even going to say? Do I even know what I'm doing? And part of the reason I got that survival job is to keep me doing it, so that I don't freak out 30 minutes before. And then I won't freak out 15 minutes before. I won't freak out 5 minutes before. I just won't, until the point where I won't freak out, because it's a practiced skill of like giving myself more and more evidence. Like, how to do this. Like, for me, interviewing is a muscle, writing is a muscle. If I haven't written something in 3 weeks, oh mama, when I go to write that thing, it's going to be terrifying. But if I'm writing something every few days, then when the big thing comes in 3 weeks, I feel like my muscles are ready for it.
Jeremy,
Yeah.
if you want to.
Yeah, well, I really identify and I'm thinking of all the sets I've had with therapist about imposter syndrome. It's like underneath, it's like what is imposter syndrome, and the thoughts underneath it are, for me anyway, it's like I don't belong. I'm good at this. Why do I should be able to do this as opposed to anyone else? Everyone's gonna find out that I know what I'm doing. And something about even just setting aside the sort of external kind of professional markers of what you're going for and just spending time with like those thoughts. And like my therapist had me like, when I have them, just write them down, which is, it sounds so corny and basic, but it's like somehow if you get them out of your head and onto a piece of paper and you look at them, you're like, that's actually a little bit ridiculous. Like, I don't, and it just helps you kind of get them like out of this like spinny place in your head, and B, once they're on a piece of paper, you can kind of challenge them, and just, it trains you to just notice the thoughts that you're having more often, and eventually then even perhaps replace them with good thoughts, which I haven't been able to do.
But it really does. I mean, I can say working with people at literally every level, like whoever you imagine to be at the highest height in your industry, and everybody in the audience, I coach these people anonymously, and every single person has a version of this. So I say that to help you not feel alone. Jeremy, do you want to tag on to that?
Well, yeah, I would even say that it actually, in some cases, can get like worse and more pronounced the more successful you are in this really strange way. And there's also something like, at least for me, there's almost like a feeling in a really kind of fucked up way, like a feeling of safety in the imposter syndrome. It's like you kind of retreat to this feeling that you know better than you know the feeling of success.
Yeah. And I just love the theme, I feel like, from all of these answers today. For me, what I'm hearing is you're all saying in different ways to like slow down, go inside yourself, listen. You'll get the information and the answers you need there. And that is the work. That is just as important, if not more important, than all of the emails you have to send or the auditions to prepare. And I just want to thank all of you for everything you shared. I'm going to pass it off to Lori. I think we're coming close to time here.
I think we are. I could stay here for hours. I love everything that you've shared. Betsy, it's also been such a joy working on this with you and your perspective and point of view. I want to thank all the actors who wrote in and asked questions. We got to the questions that we could today. I hope you'll continue on with this series. There's another one coming up in June about dealing with difficult emotions. I want to thank Betsy, of course, and Ruthie, Georgia, Tanya, and Jeremy for being with us today. Just in closing here, on behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, thank you for being here today, our panelists, and sharing your experiences and process and your craft. And we wish you the best of luck with all of your endeavors. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.